Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar, Revolutionize Your Data Governance and Metadata Management with ER Studio version 20, hosted by ER Studio. My name is David Green, and I will be moderating today's presentation. I'm happy to introduce today's presenter, Jamie Knowles, Senior Product Manager for ER Studio, who will be leading today's event. Before we get started, I would like to take this opportunity to inform you that we will be answering viewer questions after the presentation. We invite you to share your questions with us via the questions panel so that we may address them at the end. With that, we're ready to get started. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, David. Hello, everybody. So we recently released version 20 of ER Studio. Now, this release has been really focused on performance, quality, and security in the back end. There's a few minor features in there as well. So with this session, we're really going to sort of take things back up to a higher level and sort of restate the value of ER Studio and what it does. So we're not going to go into any sort of detailed demos today. If you're looking for us to discuss any of the detail of ER Studio, you want to go into more detail on any of the things that we discuss in this session, just pop a question in the comments or contact your salesperson, and we can have a follow-on session. Again, we're going to try and keep things to a high level. Okay. So revolutionize your data governance and metadata management. That's a pretty bold statement. But what we're going to be talking about is really how a structured way of thinking can bring huge benefits to data governance. Okay, let's get started. So generally, when we're looking at a data governance project, we'll start off with a data catalog. So whenever you're governing anything, the first question is, well, what are we going to govern? So we'll look at the information of the organization and decide which information is important to us and what we're going to govern. So we usually start off by building a business glossary. So quite often you'll buy a data governance tool, maybe even use ER Studio. You'll invite your organization to then start submitting business terms. Great, so we get some business terms coming in. Great, here we can see on the screen, vendor, company name, all good stuff. And then it starts to grow. Okay, business unit, department, employee, really good, useful information. And then things start to grow. Okay, so I'm now seeing here, oh, I've got some spelling mistakes and some duplicates. I've got some synonyms and homonyms and someone having a bit of a joke here. Okay, things are starting to grow. Whoa, now there's lots of business terms coming in. Wow, now things are really getting out of hand, etc. So the question now is, well, I've got a big sea of business terms. Where do I start? What am I going to govern? I'm lacking sort of focus and structure here. And this seems to be a common problem that's coming from a lot of our customers that start off with their data governance tool. We'll come on to solutions later. The next part of the story is, okay, so I've got my business glossary that allows me to create a framework of the information of the organization that we care about. Against that, we'll be assigning sort of policies and rules. The next part is the data itself. So we're going to have a whole bunch of data assets around the organization. So we need to start building a list of those. Now on the screen, we've got some databases. We've also got flat files, data living in JSON files, Parquet files, whatever it is. Okay. So we can start to gather some business metadata about these. So roughly, who owns this? What's the business purpose of each of these assets? And then we can start to think about, which of these assets do we really want to start understanding? Let's produce a prioritized list. Great. Now, we then start going through each one and we reverse engineer it. Happy days. Okay, so our data governance tools will allow us to connect to those data assets and reverse engineer it. Here we've got a data asset. Great, tells us all about it, doesn't it? Okay, so I've got a table here called cust. Okay, I can probably guess what that is. But when I start to look at the columns within it, the data elements, things start to become a bit obscure. C_RTNG, what could that be? Don't really know. Now, some data governance tools and cataloging tools will advertise AIs that will look at the actual data, will look at the metadata and give you a clue. Some of these might be quite difficult. So I've got two fields here. Now, this one I know is credit rating score. That's going to be a number between 0 and 1,000. Credit limit is the one above. That's just going to be a number. No AI is going to tell me what that data is. It's going to struggle to look at the metadata and tell me what it is. So I'm really starting to sort of depend on human beings to help me out here. Okay, so what I want to be able to do is to be able to go through all of this sort of reversed engineered schema data, this technical metadata, and start to classify it against our beautiful list of business terms. So again, we're going to need the human beings to help with this. And what I want to end up with is C_LMT is going to be attached to the business term credit limit, and C_RTNG is credit rating score. So that's going to be a challenge. Now, this is where ER Studio and data architecture can help. Now, before we get going, for those of you who aren't familiar with ER Studio, what is it? ER Studio is an enterprise tool that allows data architects to produce models of the information of the organization, and we're going to use those models to document and design data assets. Great. Similar sort of mission to our data cataloging, data governance journey so far. The word enterprise is absolutely key, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a moment. So we want to be able to produce an enterprise understanding of the information of the organization. We want the tool to be able to handle enterprise scale information and data assets. We're going to have a lot of assets, a lot of people, a lot of information. So how can we make sense of all of that huge complexity? We need to be able to support a wide range of data products, lots of different types of databases, newer technologies like NoSQL. We need to be able to look at file-based formats as well. So that's our core mission for ER Studio. And then we've got this secondary mission here. Those data architects with their wealth of knowledge, we want to be able to get them working with, supporting, driving extra value into the data governance program, and then to be able to use some of the value that data governance brings in the process of data architecture. Data analytics is also really important. So in the past, data architecture has really been focused around designing data assets like application databases. Now the data warehouse, data lake type programs are important too. So we want all of these different groups of people to work together to be able to build a company-wide data ecosystem, and for us all to work together and get combined value. ER Studio itself has got really sort of two parts. We've got our thick client data architect tool, which sits on your Windows machine, and our data modelers and architects will be using that to create models. And then we've got our team server component, which has really got two parts: our central repository to contain all those models, and then we've got our web front ends, team server core, which our wider group of stakeholders will be using to view the models, to get value out of those models, to be able to build the business glossary and the data catalog and see it. I'm going to give you a little bit of a demo on some of this in a moment. Okay, right, so let's talk about enterprise data models. Now, the core of ER Studio really is this sort of enterprise thinking, and this is what gives us that value. There are many tools out there that are good sort of point tools that focus on specific projects, but taking that sort of siloed approach gives us a lot of challenges, and we lose out on a lot of the value. And I'm always surprised on how many organizations don't have these sort of enterprise models, or worse, they just don't see the value. A common question that comes up is that these things it's going to take too much time to build enterprise models. So yeah, we don't really have time for that. We need to sort of just get going with our data projects. These models don't have to be exhaustive. They can really sort of focus on the important stuff. So a lot of companies will start sort of top down, looking at these enterprise models. Okay, let's work out what are the 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 key concepts this organization cares about. Great. Now let's look at some of these. Which ones are most important? Okay, customer is really important. Okay, let's start drilling down into customer. How do we identify a customer across the organization? What are the key attributes of a customer? Hey, we've got different types of customers. They're very different the way we treat a B2B customer as a B2C customer. So let's start creating a taxonomy. Let's understand what other pieces of information relate to a customer. So there's a lot of value in this sort of standardization approach. And I think the benefits sort of will pop up in a number of areas. So if you're looking to sort of integrate your applications, then having this sort of standardized view of data can really help with that. In the world of analytics, standardized structured models are key. Without a well-defined structure, a data warehouse can quickly become a swamp. Trying to bring together diverse data sources that contains the same information So examples would be combining customer information. This is going to be really hard without these standard understandings of what is a customer. How do we identify a customer standard? We're seeing newer analytics approaches like data mesh coming up. And that's great. We've got a goal there to sort of decentralize data. We can have domains across the organization running their own initiatives, producing data products. Now, without coordination, these projects can really go awry. There's going to be a lot of sort of common and shared information. So standardized views of data is really, really important. Okay, so in this example here, we're trying to design a new sales database. The sort of approach we might want to take is we'll create a blank canvas for our new sales database. Then we can go through the enterprise logical model and start to pick and choose which entities are going to be important for this project. Okay, and that's going to kickstart our project. So it's going to save us a lot of time, and also we've got that standardization baked in. Now, I'm going to show you this in ER Studio, so it really sort of helps in this process. The idea being we're going to start with a logical model as usual. We're going to work with our stakeholders on this. Is this the information that you're looking for in your sales database? Yes, it is. Forget about the technology at this point. As soon as we're happy with the information, then we can generate a physical model for that using the rules associated with that technology. Quite often we'll have those sort of naming conventions that we've got to employ for whatever technology it is. So our logical model is in business language that we can understand. The physical model is aligned with the technology. From the physical model, we can then generate code from that and create the actual data assets. Okay, so here is the model in ER Studio. We've already imported some entities from our enterprise logical model using the compare merge tool. So we can pick and choose. As you use the compare merge tool to bring those models in, it'll automatically create universal mappings from our model here, our projects model, back up to that enterprise model. So we've always got that sort of traceability back to the enterprise model. The next stage, just to show those universal mappings here. So if we open up one of the entities and go to our Where Used tab, then we can see that our customer in this particular project model links back up to the enterprise logical model and to the entity called customer. So that traceability is always there. And we'll see how that is then useful later on. Okay, so the next step, we can then use ER Studio to generate the physical model. We've used a naming standards template in this case to create those physical names. So we've got nicely standardized naming conventions. We can add in platform-specific type constructs like views, stored procedures, functions, etc. And then from this, we can then generate the DDL code. The change process is also really important with ER Studio. This is an important sort of part of the value of the tool. As things change, we can go back to our logical model, work with our stakeholders again. Okay, we need to add more information to customer. There's a brand new piece of information that we need in this data asset. We'll change the logical model. We'll then use that compare merge tool again to then propagate those changes to our physical. We'll compare our physical model with the live database, and it will generate all those alter scripts for us. So that change process is a really important feature of ER Studio. So going back to this slide then, looking at the enterprise model, we've got our enterprise conceptual, enterprise logical. Now, one of the things that we've been doing for a long time with ER Studio, we've kind of been doing sort of data governance as part of our architecture for a long time. And again, using these enterprise models gives us a really good framework to understand, well, what's important. So we can start from the conceptual layer. Customer, that's a really important concept in our organization. So we're going to earmark that as a priority item to start thinking about. When we come down to the enterprise logical, we've got a bit more detail. We can then start to assign sort of classification flags like, is this PII information? Is it sensitivity? This customer is critical sensitivity. Great. We can maybe assign some policies that we want to apply to that. Security and access policies, data retention policies, for instance. So the enterprise model is already giving us a good framework to start thinking about data governance. So remember early on we were talking about traditionally the business glossary is the place that we start to sort of put in our policies and work out what do we want to govern, and we end up with that sea of terms, which is really difficult. So here we've got that structure that can help us. Where do we start to prioritize and think? Now, we can publish our models to Team Server. So if you haven't seen Team Server, this is our web front end. We've opened up our enterprise conceptual data model in Team Server, and I can see these are a small number of top-level concepts. So I might be particularly interested in customer, for instance. So I can double click on customer and then read all about it. I can see the definition of it. Here I can see some of those governance flags that we're going to put in, PII flags, etc., sensitivity levels. I can then start to drill down. Okay, I'm really interested in customer. So I might have the use case of, look, I'm a business user looking for information. I want to find out where is customer information in my organization. From a governance perspective, I might want to be thinking about how do I govern customer information. So from customer, I can then see, well, where is it? In this model, ER Studio is telling me through these universal mappings that we mentioned earlier on. So from my enterprise conceptual customer down to my enterprise logical customer, and then these are all my project models. So these represent sort of data assets in the real world. They might be data products, they might be application databases, they might be sort of parts of the data warehouse, but I know that customer information lives in all of these different places. Now, this is sort of really looking from the bottom up. So once we've designed our data assets, we've deployed it to a database, I want to register it in my data catalog. ER Studio has a fairly basic data catalog here. So I can see in data catalog, I've got my production servers, I've then got my SQL Server databases. I might have registered a whole list of particular database instances. On each of these database instances, I've then got the databases. So here's the sales underscore DB database. I could then read all about it, see some basic business information. I can see the content of that data. Now, if you remember earlier on, when we actually generated the schema, it wasn't called credit rating score. It was actually called C underscore RTNG in the database. But ER Studio, because we've gone through that process of logical and physical modeling, we've got good logical names and definitions for things. So in this view, we've got a nice sort of business-friendly view. There's our credit rating score, part of the customer table, which is in our sales database. The actual table column name is called C underscore RTNG. Here's the definition of it, and there's a business term that connects to us. So I could actually hop across the business term. If there's any policies and rules associated with the business term, I could see that here. So another way of sort of browsing from the information. So let's go back to the business glossary. So again, as I mentioned, some customers might want to sort of open up the business glossary tool to everybody and say, suggest some business terms. Another way of doing it is actually using our enterprise data model. So ER Studio's got mechanisms to be able to harvest from any logical model business terms. So in our enterprise model here, for each of my entities, for each of my attributes, I can harvest a business term. I can pull the definition of those business terms across. Not only that, in that the relationships between them, if I created a really good enterprise logical model, so remember we said customer early on, I've got two different types of customer, B2B customer, B2C customer. So now I've got three business terms and I can relate them in my hierarchy using it as type of relationship. So these sort of taxonomies are really important. And once we've harvested those terms, we can then view them in Team Server. So here is a taxonomy that represents party, really nice business level view. And these taxonomies can be really important. So understanding that there are different types of things can really help. So a few years ago, I was working on an HR system and we were talking about shifts and shift patterns. We need to be able to model, to be able to understand different shifts that our employees are working through. And it took us quite a while to realize that there are 6 different shift patterns and they've got very different characteristics. So having these taxonomies to be able to understand that can save us a lot of time, a lot of risk if we've already got that defined. Improving our precision of language, reducing ambiguity is really important stuff and an important thing that data governance helps us solve. Okay, so I can drill down through our taxonomy. So customer was a really important term that we were looking at there. And I can read all about it. There's my PII flag and my sensitivity level flag. That's great. I might want to understand what information relates to a customer. These are some of the attributable terms that relate to my customer. There's a credit rating score that we were looking at earlier on. So I can drill into that, read all about it. Okay, so here is the accepted definition of credit rating score. Great. Again, there's some of our characteristics of the term that we provided. Okay, so I've now built out a well-designed glossary. We've got all our terms classified. We now want to build out our data catalog. So in our studio, just going back, so the mission is we want to create these green lines. We want to go through each of our data assets, understand the structure of that data asset and map it to the business terms. So earlier on we were saying, hey, C_RTNG, if our technical data steward was doing this in our data governance tool, then it's going to be challenging. It's got to go and find out from somebody, well, what is this column C_RTNG? Now, in Data Architects, this is the tool that we've used to design it. So we brought that business glossary right close to the person that's designing it. So attaching the relevant business term is really easy. So for this column here, C_RTNG, we had a logical name for it, credit rating score. When we bring up this dialog, it's automatically gone to search for, do we have any terms called credit rating score? Over time, we're going to add a bit more intelligence into this. We'll be looking at sort of AI and fuzzy matching. But so it's gone and said, okay, I found a business term called credit rating score. Easy peasy, I can now attach that term to the column for this particular data asset. So this has really helped us sort of build out this type of view, connecting these lines together. And the output of that, it means that I now know, well, where is my data? So a big question in data governance is, well, where is credit rating score used? Maybe we want to change credit rating score. Maybe we're going to change the number of digits in there. We're going to change the definition or the calculation of it. What's the impact of that? So because we created those green lines, ER Studio will now tell us where is all of this data. Okay. Now you'll notice every time I've gone through one of these objects, there's a little bit of text there that says open in Collibra. It allows me to hop across to Collibra. So constantly throughout, ER Studio can be synchronizing with Collibra. This is the same business term in Collibra. Collibra could be the master, ER Studio could be the master. As things change in the master, then the other can be updated through our integration. So any relationships between the terms is going to be pushed across to Collibra. As we document those data assets, map them to the business terms and push the data assets across to Collibra, the mappings to the terms is maintained. So there's the relationships, so that column we were just looking at. Okay. And again, looking at it from the columns perspective, so all of this useful business metadata that we've got in ER Studio, we've pushed this across to Collibra, pushed across the mapping to the business term, and we can hop between the two tools, so the URL can take us back to ER Studio. We might want to see a data model diagram that shows us this particular column in this table, and how does it relate to all the others, see it from a data modeling perspective. So we can hop across to ER Studio to do that. Okay, so we've now got an approach to data governance that's structured and has focus. As design projects occur, they're going to be well documented. We can quickly add them to our data catalog. We've got a clear map of where our information is stored as data. We can go to any field in any data asset, come from the bottom and understand what it is, what's the definition of it, what rules and policies apply. So we can navigate from the column in any database back to the business term. We can do that in either ER Studio or our data governance tool of choice. It gets really exciting when we get to sort of data warehousing projects, for instance. So when we're designing a data warehouse, we've got all that policy information to hand. So we can make decisions on the sort of security characteristics of our tables in our data warehouse. If we make changes, we might suddenly decide, hey, credit rating score is now very sensitive. Being able to understand the impact and see, these tables in these databases, we need to add more security to it. If you're using Warescape, which is our data warehouse automation tool, then we can actually push all of that business metadata from the business glossary from Collibra to Warescape. Warescape can actually automate the creation of those security policies. That's pretty powerful stuff. So data warehousing projects is becoming easier, more reliable. We've got security thought through as we go along. Data mesh programs then become more easy. So with our enterprise logical model, we're starting to build out a list of the important standard definitions of things. This really sort of forms the sort of foundation for your data mesh program. So each of these entities here could be a foundational data mesh product. As we then start building out aggregate data products, then we've really got our sort of Lego block type approach. We know which block, which foundational product connects to which one, and creating those aggregate products become really easy. As we've created logical models for our data mesh products, then being able to create physical data models for to realize those data mesh products become easy. They could become JSON schemas, they could become regions in the data warehouse. Okay, so I'm going to summarize now. So enterprise data models don't have to be gargantuan tasks. We keep hearing this again and again. We don't have an enterprise data model. It's going to take us too much time. It's going to be huge. As soon as we create it, it's going to be out of date. We're not going to create one. They don't have to be. They can be really focusing on the important data of your organization and give you that sort of consistency across your data asset design. So it's going to reduce time and improve consistency, make integration projects more easily, make your data warehousing and analytics projects more easy. And it's going to provide a framework for data governance. So again, right at the start, we started off just capturing all our business terms, and we ended up with a sea of terms. The enterprise data models gives us that lens, that to focus, where gives that structure. Where do we need to start? Let's focus on the important concepts and see all the detail below it. So that's enterprise data models themselves. ER Studio can help you build those enterprise data models. So creating them is easy in ER Studio. We can publish them out to the organization through Team Server, allow users to browse, starting from the enterprise conceptual, through those universal mappings, drill down into the enterprise logical, drill down into the data assets. We can connect to your data governance tools. So I mentioned connecting into Collibra. We're also connecting in soon to Microsoft Purview. That sort of harvesting the business terms capability really sort of kickstarts the creation of business glossary. We can really help with the creation of the catalog. We've got all that useful business metadata. We can really help out. And then as the data stewards start setting those policies in the business glossary, we've got access to all of that. So we can start acting on those policies, making your data governance program actionable. Great, so I've hit my 30 minutes. Let's hop over to questions. Let's see if we've got some questions here. Okay. So a couple of people asking about Microsoft Purview. So Purview is a newer data cataloging tool, is becoming more and more popular. We've been inundated in requests for this. We're working on the Purview integration right now. That's going to be released April, May time this year. So like we've done with Collibra, you'll be able to synchronize the business glossaries, harvest terms from models, populate Purview. Purview out of the box doesn't hold the notion of logical data models, so we'll be extending automatically the meta model of Purview, allowing you to publish logical models and the mappings to the terms to Purview. As you've scanned in data assets into Purview, you'll be able to connect those to physical models, add in all that useful business metadata to those scans in Purview. Somebody else is asking about Informatica. Yeah, there's a lot of data governance tools on the market. Informatica is a really popular one. We talked to Informatica some time ago and they said, look, don't do it just yet. We're moving all our customers away from on-premise Axon and EDC to the new cloud CDGC platform. Hopefully this year, depends on our budgeting process, but we're hoping to integrate with the Informatica CDGC tool as well this year. Okay, any other questions?
Hey Jamie, it's John here. So the one that we always get asked actually is, are we recording the session and will it be available for everyone? So I guess the short answer to that is yes. And you should all receive an email from our marketing folks, I guess in a few days, just with a link to the recording on there. So that's an easy logistical one. I guess one that's not really related directly to data governance, but a few people have asked about. You mentioned things that are not relational very briefly at the start, like Parquet files and so on. How does that fit in with like a relational modeling tool like your Studio? Can we represent those things?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think the sort of thinking behind ER Studio is that everything centers around those logical models. They are faithful to the information. From a logical model, we should be able to generate a physical model for any platform at all. So we've done a lot of work over the last few years on JSON and hierarchical structures, so we can convert a nice relational logical model to potentially denormalized hierarchical JSON structures. So we've added some sort of denormalization features into the logical model. So JSON has been absolutely massive for us. Somebody in the list there has asked about XML schemas. We've had XML support in for a long time. And yeah, from a logical model, you can generate XSDs and XML instance files. So in the same way, and I think the JSON support is a little bit more advanced. We might do what we did for JSON again with XML. But yeah, we can generate JSON schema files, JSON instance files. Just looking at some of the questions that are coming in, a couple of good ones. Databricks is on the list. Do we support Databricks? That we're working on at the moment as well. So the support for Purview and Databricks will come out at the same time. We're going to be connecting to the Databricks Unity catalog to be able to reverse engineer, forward engineer Delta Lake structures. I think we'll probably be looking at the Unity catalog in its sort of role as a formal data catalog and the data governance side later on. We're kind of talking to the Databricks team on where they're going with that and how we can do more. But for now, we'll just be sort of reverse engineering and forward engineering Delta Lake. A few other questions there. What do we got? There's a question about Acryl Data Hub. I've never heard of it. Perva, if you've got specific questions, then perhaps drop us a line and we can talk about that separately. Lineage has come up. That comes up regularly. So ER Studio right now, we have our visual data lineage diagrams. You can model sort of point data movements, ETL type movements from a source to a target. What we can't do at the moment is that sort of end-to-end lineage type view. It's something we're looking at and thinking about for the future. We can reverse engineer a few ETL tools to create that sort of point of focus, source and target mappings. Stored procedures, I don't think we can process to understand the data mappings. Looking for time. A couple more minutes left. Yeah, so someone's saying here, how much success would you predict in achieving a scenario if an organization does not have business glossaries and only has physical data models? There's no logical names, there's no mappings in the glossaries, and there's no conceptual data model. Yeah, and I think you're going to be missing out on a lot of value, and we're still seeing companies that are just using tools like ER Studios to sort of focus on a physical model for a specific project, and you're missing out. Being able to create those enterprise level models is absolutely vital. So we see a lot of customers will start the sort of top-down journey, thinking, okay, what are the important concepts of the organization, expand on those in an enterprise logical model. At the same time, they'll be creating physical models for either design purposes or perhaps reverse engineering COTS packages. Creating logical models from those really helps with the documentation. And then they'll start going through and saying, these entities here, let's promote those to the enterprise model, connect them into that enterprise model. So I think without logical models, you're going to be missing out. The physical models themselves generally don't have business language, business names. So the harvesting capabilities that we've got at the moment aren't really going to help you. They're going to create a whole series of business terms with sort of physical, nasty, cryptic names. Again, we are looking at sort of AI type technologies to automatically sort of expand some of those physical names and create logical ones from them. But without some of the stuff that we've been talking about, you're really missing out. I hope I answered your question there. It just paint a bleak scenario, yes. Will there be a capability to reverse engineer from physical models and associated comments? Yeah, I mean, all our physical modeling tools where we can reverse engineer, if there are comments, descriptions, business metadata in the database, then we do reverse engineer those across the board. That's something we always added in the standard. Likewise with forward engineering. So if we have created a beautiful logical model, when we generate the physical, we'll sort of carry across sort of useful business metadata like descriptions. There's an option there to then output those descriptions to the database. So platforms like Snowflake, SQL Server will allow you to put in a lot of extended properties and comments. So we do support that. Yeah, someone's asking about data profiling. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about sort of data quality profiling, looking for sort of unique values, or the sort of is the missing data, looking at the profiles of the data within them. It's something we've talked about. It is possible. If that's something that's really important to you guys, then drop us a note. And the same with any other ideas that you've got for where we can improve the tool. Fire in tickets into our support system. The support team will create those enhancements. We review them regularly. And we're constantly sort of looking at what's popular. If many of you ask for the same enhancement, great. We can then prioritize that and add it to the tool. So yeah, keep firing in your ideas, always useful. Good. I think we're past time. See if there's any other, because lots of questions coming in. I'll answer a couple more. Yeah, I think we've got everything there. There's a few duplicates of the same question. Good. If I've missed anything, please contact us afterwards. So let's move to my last slide. There is a big old URL on there. You can go to our website, you can request a demo, contact your sales rep, sales@idera.com. If you just want to fire us in an email, we'll pick those up, we'll get back to you. If you want to see more detailed demos of anything you've seen here, if you want to go into the more detail on what's new in version 20, drop us a line. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate your time today, and everyone that joined us as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us for this webinar. We look forward to you joining us again next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.